the protagonist is Filipino, the love interest is Filipino, the antagonist is Filipino. And I did not change any of it. I stuck to my guns, and I encourage all other artists, writers to do the same. I'm Rod Pulido. I'm the debut author of Chasing Pacquiao, which is a YA novel coming out May 2nd. Well, when I was a kid, I would devour books, movies, and TV shows constantly. And I'd always think of how the story could be better if I didn't like it. And I was a huge Star Wars fan growing up, but I'd always wonder why in a galaxy of endless variety of people and creatures, nobody ever looked like me. So I always wanted to tell Filipino stories because I never saw any Filipinos on screen. It's been difficult to get my stories out. I became the first Filipino feature director to premiere at the Sundance Film Festival. But even coming off screening at the biggest indie film festival in the world, I couldn't get another feature made. I was able to sign with an agent, and I went on meetings with Hollywood producers who loved my stories and dialogue, but they would tell me that I needed to make it more mainstream. And some even told me straight out that I needed to change my Filipino characters to white. That was actually the main reason why I became an author, because of lack of opportunity in Hollywood. Because Hollywood didn't want to make any movies about Filipinos, I was just left on the sidelines. So yeah, that part has not been fun, but that's not going to stop me from wanting to tell queer and Filipino stories. Well, I'd always been a huge Manny Pacquiao fan. Watched all his fights, bought and wore all his gear. And I had been thinking of a story in which a bullied teen learns to fight by studying the fights of Manny Pacquiao. But I thought it was a bit too cliched, maybe a little too Karate Kiddish. So I put it aside without much thought. And then back in 2016, Pacquiao gave an interview where he made homophobic statements in which he called gay people worse than animals. And after that, I just couldn't support him anymore. And then I realized that my original story idea would be much more poignant if it had a queer protagonist and who idolized Pacquiao and studied his fights to defend himself, and then later found out that he himself is homophobic too. Well, when I decided to try my hand at becoming an author, I basically had to learn how to write prose, because my whole life I've been writing screenplays. And, I type, he walked into the room, followed by a few lines of dialogue, then I'd break for lunch. But I had to become much more descriptive and using all the five senses. With screenwriting, it's very much just a blueprint, but with prose, you really have to dive into the voice of the character and the environment, the setting. So it took a good deal to learn how to do that. I really have like three goals when I'm writing. I want to make the reader care about the characters. I want the reader to laugh too and enjoy the reading experience. And I also want to hold the reader in suspense. So if I accomplished any of those when you're reading it, then I'm happy. I really try to, in my writing, be as specific as possible. Everybody has to have their own experience to bring to the table. Each character, all the characters in the story, they all have certain things that define them. Like Bobby, even though he's dealing with homophobia and bullying, that does not define him. He was a fully realized three-dimensional character before that even happens. He's into writing poetry, Tanaga poetry. He loves comic books. All of that's already defines him before the inciting incident of him being outed. There's aspects of my own life and personality that are virtually in every character. Bobby and Brandon are comic book geeks, and I grew up obsessing over comic books, even in the smallest characters. Like there's that one character who Rosie goes on a date with, who matches all the time. And that's kind of me making fun of myself, because I kind of match a lot in my clothes. You could tell. Like, I try to infuse parts of myself into each character just to give it some specificity, so it feels more real. Yeah, when I first started writing Chasing Pacquiao, I identified as straight. But then when I started writing it, all these childhood memories came flooding back of, having crushes on male athletes, and being called gay slurs when I was younger, and not really understanding why they were calling me that. While I was writing it, I started questioning and realizing there's a part of my identity that I never really fully acknowledged. So it was a very eye-opening experience for me. Pretty much everything about Bobby's Filipino identity, it came from my life experience, and I really just wanted to show how important that aspect of my life is. The family scenes, all the banquets, that's all from my experience. And then the parts where Bobby visits the Filipino history mural, that's all taken from my life experience too, learning about Filipino heroes. I think it's more interesting when you have economic diversity and not just cultural diversity, because even if you're the same ethnicity, you're still going through some different experiences based on your socioeconomic status. And I think it just makes for a more interesting story when you have characters who interact from different backgrounds. And I wanted to address those issues of socioeconomic differences, and how a lot of Filipinos can be too status conscious. Believe in your voice. There are people who are going to want you to change your story and to make it more mainstream, to water it down. Do not compromise your vision. Take time to learn your craft. A lot of people think that they can just become a writer or a director, without studying the craft and realizing that, it's an art form. But if you put in the work and study, and do not give up on your voice or your vision, then good things will happen.